It is. Hello,
We're
hello.
we're recording. I'm in my pajamas, but I'm drinking coffee.
That's all right. Coffee is the key. So anyway, should we continue the conversation?
That's thick.
Oh wow, my gosh, that looks like a mushroom bath, and that's exactly what it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's homemade mud.
yeah. You know what? Maybe we could go more into I don't know. I think it's really interesting how so many spiritually minded people more so than any other group are really drawn to the concept of land and soil citizenship from the from the angle of sovereignty,
Shocking.
which I think is something that we need to sort of I don't know, observe maybe, because freedom, sovereignty is a free has a frequency. It's a very high frequency, and people who are more spiritually aware and who have been doing work on themselves from a spiritual perspective tend to be less dense and full of, clogged pipes and clogged filters, so they can recognize the resonance of freedom and gravitate towards it.
Their soul and consciousness are pulling them home. So
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
it begins percolating. And
Right.
even if it's percolating through the density into the third dimension and they're going wonky with it, but here is also the incoherence, right? It's a measure of the incoherence. There have been so many groups popping up everywhere that on the one hand, if we could just get our shit together and communicate and work together for the
Right.
same
Yep.
freedom for all,
Yep.
it's splintered into massive groups, or people get frustrated and they get impatient and they leave.
Yeah.
And I think some of that has to do with because all of the attempts are only made in the third dimension, and the
Yep.
third dimension in its densest form takes the longest. So
Absolutely. And right, right. And so we find these
I
fundamentalist people
totally
that
agree.
are stuck in religion, the politics of God rather than the spirituality, which is the practice of it.
Oh,
And
that's beautifully said.
there's
Yes.
actually that I have to credit where it's due. Carolyn Meese, that's one of my favorite quotes of her, and she's a medical intuitive. She was one of the first people 20 something years ago that I discovered when I was on this path. And archetypes, she brought in the whole concept of archetypes, blew it up, and that made me recognize, all of the symbolism on a different level. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, yes, you're absolutely right. There are multiple different disparate groups. We all have the same end goal. However, depending on where you're coming from and your level of true spiritual awareness, and I look at spiritual awareness too in terms of that really is a reflection of how clean and clear your channel is. And so it's the amount of work that you've actually done, which is going to be reflected in your ability to filter it, because that's what dissolves true spiritual growth and self work and shadow work and, internal mindfulness practice is what dissolves those filters. And so you become more and more coherent. And so this is the reason why, of all it's so interesting that when I started this journey, I was firmly rooted in just from the 3D perspective, did my paperwork, got out of that jurisdiction, started, on this really fast track of learning and absorbing as much as I could about history, about, America, about the fraud, about the ways that it's playing out. And then as I began talking to people, I found that it's these high consciousness spiritual groups that are like, "Oh my God," like you. I went to our that meeting, my very first meeting with the spiritual group, Massachusetts, that you were hosting. There were what, like 20 something people there in that room, and I start talking about sovereignty and everybody's like, "Oh my God, I want to know more. We
Everybody
need
was
to
on
start."
the edge of their seats. Yeah.
Exactly. More people have come to land and soil and actually suffered through the paperwork, which is really hard when your consciousness is so expanded. It's really hard to get down to the nitty gritty of, oh my God, I got to weed through paperwork. And what exactly is the format that I have to? It's literally a translation from the higher realms, from big picture, come down, shove 15 pounds of fertilizer into a 5-pound bag and write this shit down and get it in the format that the de facto recognizes. And so, yeah, it was this distillation process, but so many people are that way. They recognize the truth because they have clean and clear filters. So the sovereignty vibration resonates and it's like, oh my God, I want that. And this is one path to go there in the physical world. And you know what? By doing that, I don't know if I mentioned this in one of our other videos, when I took that step of on paper declaring myself and doing that education and then getting out to talk to people about it, that is what really, really informed and guided and literally set fire to my whole spiritual practice, because that was the beginning of me, doing a really, really, really integrating all the lessons I had learned from the years of these different techniques, Reiki and Bach flower essences and emotion code and hypnosis and past life regression, all of these things, and then seal clearing and grid working, all of that came together. And when you have taken back your sovereignty in the physical realm, that it literally it radiates upward into your entire energy channel, and it makes your spiritual work a million times more powerful. And I credit that as being that was a grounding technique that I needed to do here in order to really grow as a spiritual energy worker. And so it's the recognition of consciousness, and people that are stuck in the matrix, that are still living in fear, still believing the narratives, putting on their muzzles, driving around, being afraid of everything, listening to the authorities, filing their taxes, obeying, the policy enforcement agents, and being too scared to even look at anything else. It's because their third eye, as well as their entire energy channel, is very blocked. And also traumatized, the entire vagus nerve channel is loaded with trauma.
It
Once you
is,
start
and
hearing,
even if it's coming from a place of caring so much about people that you think
mhm,
this is the way to do it,
yep,
that you think to follow mandates and restrict yourself and to move from a place of fear is actually how to help people. It's
yes,
not because of the way the universe works, because the what the science indicates, right? What the science of consciousness indicates and the science of the future indicates is that when you're operating from a place of fear, you're drawing more situations to yourself to experience fear from.
yep.
And there's, beings that are feeding off of you that you probably can't see if you're that dense.
Exactly.
But you
And
can
you know what
you can
too?
feel through anxiety.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And remember that when we take those in, we absorb more of it.
Mhm.
That is an energy that is now existing in our energy field. It's just like this is the concept that we learn in emotion code, which really like he articulates that whole situation in such a beautiful way. But emotions have energy, and fear is a very strong energetic signature. And so when you take that in and you absorb it and you imprint fear, it's sending out that vibration, attracting more of it. Exactly. And
Yeah.
so by doing your own internal work and dealing with these trapped emotions and releasing them, you will find that less and less and less is what shows up, essentially. So it's really so multidimensional.
It is very multidimensional. You've got that right. Very multidimensional. And I mean, we don't gotta do anything, but it would be nice and it would move things along quite a lot more quickly if um, there was among patriots, among patriots who and freedom loving people and sovereignty loving people, if there was a little bit more of a willingness to listen
Mhm.
with other groups that say that that's what they want,
Right.
so that we could figure out how to work together more. And is there any way you can turn that light away a little bit? It's
I
kind of
already turned it away.
blinding.
Sorry.
Um,
I'll come on the other side of it. How's
Nice,
that?
don't tread on me.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so
Doggone it.
so Yeah, it would just be nice if we could work together. We would be imagine.
Right.
But I
Right.
mean, it's happening. It's happening slowly. It's
It
percolating to
is.
the surface, and this is how you can see it. It's popping up everywhere. There's kind of no stopping this. There's
Right.
no stopping this,
Nope, there isn't.
and but there's a way to have more fun, and have less cataclysm, and more fun,
Hmm.
and more conscious unity, and to enjoy the ride a little bit more when there's more consciousness there, as opposed to victimhood, reactionary survivor, just surviving, and unhappy surviving.
Yeah. And also trying to impose the ego. The ego is that's a huge thing that I'm finding with a lot of people
Yeah.
in assembly who are more fundamentally based and who maybe have been aware of sovereignty for years and years, but just didn't necessarily take the steps. And now they're coming to assembly, they're finding, they're finding the groups, and then they want to they want to stay in their old mindset and not, I don't know, it's hard to describe. I'm finding a lot of people that are so stuck in their own egoic patterns that they can't accept anybody else's worldview. And so they lose track of what is the common goal that we all have, which is essentially freedom. We all want peace. We all want love. We all want harmony. We all want abundance. We want community. All of us do, but it's just how do we get there and how do we accept and allow each other to be the way that they are over there, but still working together in order to achieve the common goal and not lose sight of that. We're finding, and see, this is the trap of these multiple different siloed groups. They don't really, many of them do want to come together, but many of them are so stuck in their ways that they think that they can operate like a little island unto themselves over there. And well, that's distilling the entire energy. It's really important that we all come together. It's really
it's
important that
it's stuff
everyone stop being fragmented and pointing fingers at each other. My way is right. No, your way is wrong. And it's this fighting. It's the exact same thing that the cabal has always done to make
because the
people.
cabal has done a really,
Yes.
really, really good job in in solidifying this idea that God is outside of you, and that we're going to be saved by something outside of us,
Mhm.
rather than we are all one being, and what we see out there is a reflection of
Vision
what's
of
in
what's in
here.
here.
And until we can comprehend that and accept that, how, like, right, that the when I'm talking about having the God goggles on and seeing God in each other's eyes and in all sentient beings, treating everything as if it's a piece of God,
Mhm.
when you're what that, you know, ego can come in so many different ways that is so alluring, I think.
Yep. Yeah,
um, but
absolutely.
it's the fragmentation. It's the fragmentation asserting itself. And how do we get to the place where we're loving the diversity? The fragmentation is the experiment. And so to be able to be okay with all of that,
Yep.
accept it and see it and not fight against it, but stay solid.
Mhm.
And really, what you're doing is you're truly becoming that beacon of sovereignty, comprehending that, um, and then that's flowing out to you, and drawing more of that to you.
Right, and that's actually what self-governance really means. We're
Yeah.
talking self-governance from the perspective of we the people coming together, forming the alternative government structure to act as the checks and balances
The
to.
original government structure.
Right. So
The
there's
original.
that. There's that form of self-governance, but then there's also the individualized self-governance, which literally is sovereignty. And it falls under the umbrella of spiritual sovereignty because spiritual is the umbrella under which physical, emotional, and mental come together. And so spiritual really is a crucially important concept for people to fully integrate. And so I feel like, yes, we have to continue with that message to send out to people that we all are, we might not be on the same page, but we are in the same book. And we ultimately want the same ending, even though nothing's ever an ending, it's the journey.
Yeah.
It's always going to we're never gonna we're always going to be moving for improvement and growth and so on, but we need to recognize all of these ways that people are looking at their separation from each other rather than coming together with with what makes us the same, essentially. And there are also a lot of people, influencers, who are out there that are focused on money, and they're focused on, their way is earning them all this money. And so it's in their financial best interest to continue to insist on how their way is right. And so that pulls people in because people are always looking for a savior. Again, that's not true self-governance, but people are drawn to that, and then they follow this following over here, and they're following a, a person, essentially a
It
person with
becomes
an
a cult of
ideology.
personality. It becomes a cult of personality, but it's still this
Mm.
idea that money, whether it's this guy or this woman or this approach that's going to save you,
Yep.
um, not unless it's bringing you back to yourself, not
Right.
unless it's bringing you back to finding and developing and cultivating an inner peace and a comprehension that the Christ is within, right? That if you truly listen to what to what was said by him and what was said at the time, and you're looking into that, if that's your jam, right? If your jam is a Christianity that is using the book,
Yep.
which book, whose version of the book? Look at, start to examine when they were written, how they were written, how it got filtered, how the true words got left out,
Yep.
who reinvented them, and just take a look at the difference in the gods that are depicted,
Oh yeah.
and truly, truly, truly
Clearly a different, very, very, very different
yeah.
God. Very, very different. I mean, it's such a radical difference that it's actually mind-boggling how anybody can't see that. They are not these different. We're talking about the Old Testament to the New Testament. It is so clear that each book is talking about a completely different God. That is not the
But
same.
just even like the internalization, people who are good Christians internalizing this punishing God. It's not God.
No, that's it reminds me of the Star Trek, the Star Trek movies, the original Star Trek, the one where I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Star Trek number 5, where the brother of Spock was looking for God, and they found this. The Enterprise traveled to a planet, and there was this almighty being that they encountered there, who he thought was God, that he found God. And it truly, like, it revealed itself in its methods. It was kind of like the God of the Old Testament. And so the other, Kirk and Spock and everybody else were like, clearly that is not God.
Well,
However, Sarek, who was the brother, who was, oh, I have found God finally, I'm going to stay here with you. But then he realized too that this is actually an entity. This is not God. It's another false God. And so the God of the Old Testament, that movie so perfectly, in my view, nails that. I don't know if you've seen it. When I was growing up and when Athena was young, we loved the old Star Trek. I mean, it's just we loved it. That's
yeah,
probably the only television show that I ever really watched. So anyway, but
yeah.
yeah, you're right.
It's
You're
one
right.
of the
People need to recognize. They need to recognize. They need to listen to their own internal discernment, putting aside things that they think are true and feel into it.
yeah, yeah. God does not want you to feel fear.
Right. And there's no place for fear.
There's
Yeah.
there's information in fear that's helpful, right? The reptilian part of the brain that I believe was installed after the fact, um, uh, to recognize when there is something in the immediate vicinity that could possibly be dangerous, that's been utilized to keep us at a specific level of consciousness that does not allow us to see the divinity within and the divinity within everything,
Mhm.
that that's the biggest, the consciousness that's falling away is this warmongering, this divisive,
Mhm.
judgmental, um, uh, evil. I don't know how else to say it, right?
Well,
Uh,
it's master race. It's really, if you think about it, it's the black sun, it's master race. It's all of that. That's military industrial complex. That's toxic masculinity. It's all the bad things of the divine, the shadow of the divine masculine energy, which is all about, like domination and cruelty and forcing and control and hierarchy. All of that. The assumption that people are bad and it without the benevolent overlords to come together controlling all of that, they would cause chaos and just descend to a state of absolute, devastation, killing each other.
I mean, there's some of that there, though, that's like, that's so I think that that paradigm, yes, and that paradigm has been used by a few very self-serving individuals
Mhm,
that have been able to pull the purse strings, literally,
mhm.
and the wool over everyone's eyes, to be able to not recognize that we are all capable of Hanity. We have all of that yuck and all of that divinity within. It's a reflection of what we are capable of.
Right,
So
but that's a
what do we
choice.
truly
Right.
want?
That's a choice to embrace the
Choice point.
shadow.
Huge choice point.
Yeah.
What do we want?
What do we want?
Have we not at this point gone through enough depravity to make a choice for something better?
Absolutely, and we are all more than capable of that, but it takes being conscious, takes being present, it takes in the moment recognizing, "What am I choosing?"
That I'm actually choosing, that I have
Mhm.
a choice and that I'm choosing with
Right.
my thoughts and with my next step, and that the universe and God itself is the 0 point of all
Yes,
possibility.
absolutely.
So what do you want?
Absolutely.
So we have the ability to truly, we're on this trajectory, we have the realization, oh my gosh, yes, we can pivot in the blink of an eye. We can actually, God is so amazing, we can go back and fix stuff.
Absolutely.
We
Yep,
can.
we can. We
However,
should talk
however,
more on that because 'cause I'm gonna have to go because I have to go to work.
okay, choice points,
Choice point.
consciousness, and the clearing so
Yeah.
that we're not seeing through the filters of the programming. There's so much to say about that.
Yes,
Have
there
a
is.
great day. Thank you
You
all for being
too.
with
Thank
us.
you.
Please ask
Alright.
any questions that we'd be happy to answer and talk about. If there's a subject matter you want us to discuss having to do with any of these things,
Yep.
or even something else, we'll entertain it.
Right.
And
Like and subscribe.
like and
And
subscribe.
please share our channel.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Alright,
Take care.
bye.